I get people saying to me at least a couple times a week, thank you so much for the content. If not for your video, I would not be here. Because there are people that literally plan their day to day. I didn't know this was the thing because it's happened so much. I've actually discovered people, when they're feeling in that frame of mind, they'll actually plan it out. And then they'll go and say their goodbyes and, visit everyone's Facebook profiles or whatever. And, I've had that many people that have been in that process, and then a Facebook video pops up, of me solving a problem, and they go, shit, And to me, I take that shit pretty seriously because I'm very well aware that there's mums, dads, kids, aunties, uncles, grandparents, and grandmas right now that are present in a family unit that wouldn't be there if not for the fact I just bothered, to share a piece of content around addiction or dyslexia or mental health or relationships.
Today we're talking with Kerwin Rae. He's a business strategist, he's a high-performance specialist, he's an entrepreneur, and he's an international speaker. He's helped over 100,000 companies and businesses across the world in 154 different industries through 11 countries worldwide. He's the host of the Unstoppable podcast. He runs a number of events, including the Fast Growth Summit and Nail It and Scale It. And he's become one of Australia's most well-known business personalities, all through the power of content, social media, and adding extreme value at scale. Today, we'll be talking about entrepreneurship, social media for business, achieving success, growing a personal brand, and how to drive high performance through personal and professional development. And just quickly before we get started, make sure to go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you get the latest episodes as soon as they're released. Now let's get into it. Welcome, Kerwin.
Alex, honored to be here, mate. It's you've been a good friend for a long time, and it's always good to catch up and have a chat.
Yeah, and we were just having some pre-show chat, and there's a lot to cover, and we've got a very short time frame. So we're both going to talk fast. Yeah. That's what we've said at the very start. And we'll try to get through.
Listen faster.
So we'll try to get through a lot of stuff, but we'll just make sure that we will talk about the good stuff, and we'll go into some detail across some of your successes, because you have a lot of them. Let's get into it. So can we start with some history? What's been your journey? Because I'm sure now everyone just sees Kerwin across social media, which has got millions of followers and conferences and all that. So yeah.
Look, I get asked that question a lot, and I always respond, and it's never nice to respond to a question with a question. It depends on where you start. Like, my story is, maybe not unlike some others, but very different to other people's perhaps. I was born in Canberra, was brought up by a single mum on a pension. Now, my parents divorced when I was about 6 months old. And I guess you could say I grew up in a household that was full of love. But there wasn't necessarily what you'd call a lot of entrepreneurial spirit necessarily. But it wasn't until I started to realize that money was a factor. We didn't have a lot. And there's a saying that voids breed values, and because we didn't have a lot, I assumed that was something that was missing from our lives. It may have added a little bit more value. And so from the moment I worked out I could make money, I was game for anything, washing cars, mowing lawns. First business was actually mowing lawns, washing cars actually. And me and my mate got a bucket together and we washed the neighbor's car, and he had a steel watch on, and we put scratches all over it. And so our parents had just been doing that. And then we grabbed the lawnmower out and didn't ask the parents to do that. And then we ran across the driveway, hit a stone, smashed a giant window. And then I settled on, it's actually kind of interesting because I was living in a semi-rural area at the time in Townsville selling manure, but because everyone was doing that at the time, it was quite a fad. It still is, but we decided to put it in garbage bags, put it in wheelbarrows, and take it door to door. And that was actually a raging success. In my first 6 weeks there, we made about $360. Me and my mate were about 13 years of age, and it was all in the pursuit of making money to go to the Townsville show.
Wow.
And since then, look, my story is unique. I failed every subject from year 1 to year 12, diagnosed ADHD, dyslexic at the age of 7, 8, undiagnosed SPD on the spectrum. I've had there's so many things in my life that I could really go into. Had my first near-death experience at the age of 15, which was actually probably something important as a part of the journey, because, I was handed a pretty decent shit sandwich. Not only was I not academically bright in any stretch, I never read a book until the age of 23. I considered the only thing I had was my sporting prowess, and it wasn't great, but I at least thought I had enough, potential to be a professional sportsman. And then at 15, I fell on a broken bottle, cut my nerves, tendons, and I was told I was going to be disabled. And so that in itself created a very foundational journey at a very important stage of life, where I learned fundamentally how to overcome a massive obstacle, and it really did kind of shape where I went to from there. And I had about 48 different jobs throughout school before I stumbled upon, I guess you could say, entrepreneurship. And, like many other people, I failed a few times. Had a security company that didn't go so well before I actually, started to find my groove. And my groove was in the process of buying, building, selling businesses. But where I really started to thrive was in the area of education. And that's where I guess you could say I really paved my way from a motivational, or not motivation, more of a purpose-driven perspective. Because I worked out very early, in my mid-20s, I could make money, but I realized I could make money doing a whole range of things. And there were some things I made money at, I was just miserable. And so after making money, losing money a couple of times, it's quite humbling. You get the opportunity to reflect and go, what were the things that I was doing that I really enjoyed when I was making money? Let's do more of that. And that's how I kind of ended up where I am now.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's such a good intro. I mean, you've covered a lot of stuff in just a couple of minutes, mate. So I do appreciate it. I think because I've got like a few talking points. Yeah, let's jump to entrepreneurship, because you did mention that. And I think that would be a good next step. To you, what does it mean to be an entrepreneur?
Gosh, labels, hey? Labels in there.
I know. We've got to go down the path, though.
Because there's a lot of people that are quite protective of the term. Say, you can't call yourself an entrepreneur unless you've got the battle scars to prove it. And I think there's a certain credibility that's required to really kind of put yourself in the realm of an entrepreneur. It's like saying because an entrepreneur to me is a professional businessman, right? There's someone who is a professional businessman who is proven. So I can't go out to you and you say, oh, you play tennis. Yeah, I'm a professional tennis player, Alex. I can't do that because I'm not a professional tennis player. And so, I think there's a lot to be said for giving credit where it's due. And, once you've been in business for a period of time where you've got some runs on the board, you've got some levels of successes, you've got, a level of skill and a base level of basic, fundamental mastery, I think then you can really start looking at kind of hanging on that mantle. I think for a long time, I think a lot of people put that term up in a mantle. It's been a long time since I've really cared about what people said or how people labeled me, but I do understand, like, it's a badge and everybody wants to wear it, but in some industries, so is being a professional sportsman, and, you've got to earn that title. Yeah,
right. And so what do you call people that are starting on that journey, but that haven't achieved success or mastery?
Well, I think, it depends on where you're at in the journey. If you're still early stage, I'd say, you're a business owner. You're an early stage startup. You're a business owner. I don't think and again, this is getting into the nuances of a distinction between a business owner and an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is someone that has been able to get paid consistently for their work. They're a professional athlete in the commercial space. A business owner is someone who can say, well, I have a business. I haven't made any money yet, but I have an ABN, and I'm making some bucks and I'm covering my cost of living. I'm a business owner. And that to me it's a small distinction. As I said, I don't get into it, but for me, if I was to sit down and create a category, that's how it would be when you're handing out the awards for, are you an entrepreneur or not?
Yeah, because the reason I ask that is because there's also the entrepreneur's mindset.
Oh, yes.
Now the mindset, I mean, so we try to hire people that have the entrepreneurial mindset. So they may not be entrepreneurs, but they have the mindset of an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So how would you define the mindset of an entrepreneur?
Yeah, look, the mindset of an entrepreneur is very different from the mindset of an employee. The mindset of an entrepreneur is someone who's very value driven. Their goal is to deliver as much value as they possibly can in the time that they've got. And I think that's evident in the way, a lot of people, perform. And so for me, it comes down to your ability to add value.
Your ability to add value. And I think there's also a component of ability to take action in the fear of, absolutely, in the face of failure or something along those lines.
Contrast, there's a whole gambit we could go down, but in contrast to like an employee is someone who sees time for money. They see, if I give an hour, I want to be paid for an hour. Whereas, the entrepreneur mindset, or that entrepreneurial mindset, they have to be a little bit more long term. It's not so much about time for money; it's about an outcome. And so whether you play above the line or below the line, and employees or most employees, or what I'd call staff, play below the line, where they're trying to tick boxes. They're starting things, but they're not necessarily following through. When you're playing above the line, you're all about completion. And that to me is the entrepreneurial mindset, because as an entrepreneur, based on the category I just gave it, you're not worth anything unless you can produce something. And so that's a form of measurement of how I would measure it. And so for me, and it's interesting because we look for team members who have that entrepreneurial mindset, and then sometimes we get really upset because they go and start their own business. But, and I'm sure you've seen this yourself, Alex. Yeah. The ultimate talent member, I hate using the word employee or staff, is someone who's had enough experience to realize they don't want to be in business for themselves. Okay. But they realize that they do think like a business owner, and that to me, I think some people get stuck in that space where they think like a business owner. They're an employee, but they keep trying to do the employee thing, but it's just not cut out for their risk profile in some cases.
So hiring, well, in my experience, if you have a team of people that have the entrepreneur's mindset, and if you can attract them, that's a very powerful team. That's the kind of team that can win championships. Yeah. How do you attract them as a company? Yeah. So for the leaders out there who want to hire these kind of people, how would you attract them, and what would you do to keep them?
Like attracts like, and at the end of the day, I think when it comes down to talent, culture is everything, because this is one of the things that I've observed about very talented people. In most cases, they're not doing it for an extrinsic factor. They're doing it for not doing it for an extrinsic factor. They're doing it for something that is intrinsically driven. And so for me, I want to make sure that I align with people that are ideally looking to do things because they want to be better. And that's what mastery is. Mastery is the pursuit of being better. And so for me, when it comes to talent, and in this question specifically, it's how can we assess what good talent is very quickly in the hiring process to ensure that this hasn't been a waste of time. And so for me, in order to get those right people, we have to create an environment that is attractive for them to want to work in. And that's what a culture is. And a good culture is bred by good leadership, and performance culture is bred by performance leadership. Leadership is a visible trait. It's not a badge. It's a game of visibility. And monkey see, monkey do. And so for me, if you want a high performance team, first of all, you have to create an environment where it's very welcome. But secondly, there needs to be a benchmark and an example that is set by someone, ideally the CEO, who is consistently demonstrating a set of values that are performance-based values, but it's evident in the way that they talk, the way that they walk, the way that they show up, the way that they complete. And that then becomes the benchmark for us to leverage on and go, well, hang on, because if I'm not willing to do something, then that gives someone permission to, essentially take the same position. And so for me, high performance environments, in order to create a high performance environment, first of all, it has to be welcome, as I said, and that's an important point, because some people, hire really great talent, but then they surround them with toxic people who are threatened by good talent, who undermine them and sabotage them. And so that to me is, again, it's an aspect of the culture and what's acceptable and what the standards are, which will determine the level of trust and how well people perform. But if you don't have a high performance leader, you're not going to have a high performance team in most cases, unless you have high performance leaders within that team. Jocko Willink said it best: there are no bad teams, they're just bad leaders.
Such a good point. And I got my talking points, but you're making me jump all over the place because there's so many things which I want to ask you right now. Okay, let's say that then you look at your team, and your team isn't the team that you want. And if we take like Jocko's point that there's no bad teams, there's bad leaders, where's the first place to start to
mirror? In the mirror. You hired all of them. You chose all of them. They were all your decisions. Start with you, and I say this about life. Like, if you want to get better at life, get to know who you are. If you want to be a better leader, get to know who you are. And, I think when we look in the mirror, especially with an unbiased, unconditional perspective, to really look at where our strengths and weaknesses are, because right now, like, the environment that you've got is the environment you've created. If you're looking around the environment going, oh shit, it's my team. Gosh, there's only one consistent thing in there, and that's you. It's like the person who goes from relationship to relationship to relationship, and every time they go to a relationship, they have the same problems. And they come out and they go, I just don't understand why I keep attracting that same personality. So, well, you're that person. You're more than 50% of that creation.
So where do you start when you say, all right, wow, damn, it is me? Yeah. What's a place that you can start?
Oh, self-audit. Really self-audit and vulnerability, and that's what I've found is really powerful from a leadership perspective, when you can stand in front of your team and go, you know what, guys, I fucked up. I allowed this standard to prevail. I didn't hold this standard. I'm human like everyone else, and I want to apologize for allowing that standard, to be accepted as something that is permissible in this environment, because it's not, and that's my fault. And I've done that so many times this year, because we've had, some challenges as a live event company, and can't tell you how many times I've had to take a knee in front of the team and say, guys, my fault. I accept full responsibility for how we got here. We had a restructure recently, and I've been burning, because we took about a $12 million hit this year, but we're very well capitalized. And so we're quite strong. But at some point, we got to the point where we're going to have to restructure, because as we pivoted to digital was tracking incredibly well, but it didn't quite, make the mark of where live was in order to make things balance. And we're like, okay, we're going to have to do a little bit of a restructure. And I said to the team, guys, I'm really sorry, because I've spent the last 9 months trying to fucking bust a melon and a nut trying to create sales channels and marketing channels in order to build sales and revenue so that we could match live, so I didn't have to have this conversation. But we do, and so it's my fault. And so I want to apologize for that. And as a result, we had to let a few people go, and that's never nice. And that's, again, an important aspect of leadership, is that important of being able to embrace humility and embrace the challenging things, and that for me was a big one. And my entire team got to see it, very publicly. I didn't hide from that fact at all. And again, it breeds, what people see, it breeds behavior.
So many good points in there. I think it is interesting when everyone wants to have a company that's all just happiness and the beanbags and everything is good. But, like in business, it's also can be hard sometimes. It's also, you got to make the hard decisions that's for the greater good. And, like how you approach those situations. Sometimes it's your first time, sometimes it's your 10th time, but they're never easy. And they're always a challenging part. And if you're a good leader, it becomes easier, but it's never easy. It's never easy.
It does become easier. And this is the thing, especially in the environment we're in right now, there's a lot of uncertainty. And a lot of team members right now, and a lot of talent members, everyone's feeling the uncertainty, not just the business owners, but also the teams as well. And they're looking to the most certain person in the room. Who's got the most certainty? And if no one's got certainty in the room, that, the team's going to be it'll undermine the team and they'll be fucked. But if you as a leader can just constantly show up, and as you said, anyone can lead on a 28-degree day. Anybody can lead on, anyone can do personal development when life is great. If there's 28 degrees and there's dolphins on the starboard, there's 15 knot wind, we're cruising, baby. I can lead this boat anywhere in the world. But how are you when there's a storm approaching? How are you when it's on top of you? How are you when it actually escalates to a cyclone? Are you in there hiding in the galley, with everyone else? Or are you out there charging and, battening down the hatches? And that's what people see. And that will inspire people to perform at levels, above and beyond what in most cases they would otherwise, because you're the example. It's a visible example. And that shit's inspiring.
Yeah. I mean, for me, like in those kind of situations, like it is like an athletic sport. Like your fitness is important. Your psychology is important. The people that are surrounding you are important.
Sport. It is and that's what a lot of people don't realize. Entrepreneurship is a professional sport, and every different business is a different discipline of professional sport. With what I do, there's a level of fitness that I have to have when I'm speaking all the time, when I'm doing meetings all the time, and if I don't have that fitness, I don't perform and I can't compete as well, and I think that's a big mental shift for a lot of people, because they don't want to see themselves as an athlete necessarily. They want to see I'm just a business owner. But if you look at I don't know if you've seen The Power of Full Engagement, or have you read the book, The Power of Full Engagement? Of course you have. You're a fucking bookworm like me. Now, what I love about that book is how it looks at the business athlete and going, well, hang on, when you look at the fact that we are professional athletes in a business context, and you compare us to normal athletes, how much time do normal athletes spend, training? How much time do they spend rest and recovery? And how much time do they spend in competition? It's like 3% of time in competition, 70% of the time in rest and recovery, and the other 30%, 25% of the time, in training. But as business owners, we're in 98% competition, maybe 1% training and 0.5% rest and recovery. And, that's why, the entrepreneurial landscape is littered with casualties from not just physical health, but also mental health, because it is a duality. And to me, if you approach it like what you're saying, as a professional sports people, there's a psychology to professional entrepreneurship. There's a physiology, there's a biology to performing at a high level as a business owner. And there's a fitness, great contrast.
Yeah. And just to wrap up this point as well, that just like a professional athlete, surround yourself with the best coaches, visualize at the times when you're not training, like these things are important.
If you want to be a tennis great and you're playing with beginners, you're fucked. Doesn't mean you can't play with beginners, but you got to start playing with someone who can outrun you, someone who can out-hit you, someone who can outserve you, because that's only how you're going to hone your reflexes to become faster. And again, another point we could talk to is why people don't step up, because it's comfortable. They don't have to try so hard. And as mammals, that's something that we like to do, is fit in.
Okay, man, we could spend a whole hour just on leadership. Let's shift to social media, right? Because last few years, you've blown up on social media. 1.3 million followers on Facebook, 166,000 plus followers on Instagram, 52,000 subscribers on YouTube. There's TikToks. I'm sure there's Snapchats. I'm sure that's everything. How? What did you do? What was your secret sauce, as everyone wants to know? What's your approach?
Hard work to become an overnight success. Look, I think, to give context, we've had now well in excess, just on Facebook, over 500 million video views since 2016. Well over 80% of that is organic. So we don't just have followers, like we have very high levels of engagement, in the millions. And so for me, look, I got lucky, and by lucky I meant, timing. There was an intersection of timing and knowledge and experience where, I bumped into a guy called Gary Vaynerchuk, who you know as well. We hired him to come and speak for our K2 elites. He came out and spoke at the back of the room. I hit him up and I was like, "Oh, hey Gary," and at that time I had like 52,000 followers on Facebook, shit engagement, but I thought I'd kind of like, "Oh, hi Gary, look, I'm on social media," and I didn't know as much about Gary at the time, and I learned very quickly. And yeah, he spent 15 minutes very kindly just taking me apart and just telling how much my social media sucked. And I went away that Christmas 2015. I was like, right, something's got to change. I need to make a serious shift. And I had 6 weeks off, and it was too long, but it was good because I got bored. And I decided, right, social media is going to be it. And so I came back, hired a filmmaker, literally the 23rd of January. That relationship didn't work out. And then 6 weeks later, I found another guy, Matthias, who is now still my filmmaker today. And I just got a guy just to follow me around with a camera. And we initially launched with a piece of content called The Social Experiment, which was just a documentary of behind the scenes of me transitioning between a traditional marketing business and a social media marketing business. And that became what you'd call a pillar piece of content. But where we really started to blow up is when we were taking these documentaries, like these 15, 25-minute documentaries, and we're taking out 30-second clips and 60-second clips and 2-minute clips of me, having a charge or dealing with a situation. And it just really blew up. And look, I think it resonated for a whole range of reasons. People say, and by the way, oh gosh, I remember this is back in the days when we were getting like, reach of, 30 million in some cases a week, organic, and that was, going back a while. But it just blew up and it just kept on going and going and going and going and going. And it was really quite humbling. But the only thing I can really put it down to is, apart from really good timing, is really good quality utility content that was marketed in a very strategic way so that it didn't look like marketing, that solved a whole bunch of people's problems without him having to spend a cent with me, that made me endearing. It built trust, it built rapport. And as a result, it created a flood of not just interest and engagement, but also, revenue and sales in the back end.
Yeah, right. And your content, you take little snippets also of your conferences as well, like of your seminars as well, and you give sneak previews, and it's good stuff, right? And so you found there's certain content that performs better, there's certain lengths or anything?
I know my market, and again, my higher end market, is 30 to 55, 1 million to 100 million business, and, outliers at 300 million outliers on the startup, 50-50 male, female, about, close to 90% are in a relationship, and it's about 85 to 87% are in a parenting dynamic. And so this happened totally by accident, by the way. But what I do is I talk about everything I'm doing. Let's say, I get documented, because there's two types of content you can create content, sit to camera and talk to it, or documentation where you just have someone follow you, conferences, offices, and that's my style of content. I get captured talking about everything I'm interested in. And so I'm interested in, obviously business, social media, performance, parenting, mindset, spirituality. But it's been amazing. The piece of content that has blown up more than anything else is parenting. Which is quite interesting. And when you really look at this statistic I'm about to give you, this is going to make you go, what the fuck? 70% of our audience on social media are not entrepreneurs or in business, so, and again, let that land. And right now, we have no commercial offering for the general public. We have one that we did 5 years ago that we're bringing back called The Power to Create, which is going to be for the general public. We'll be launching that again next year. But up until now, we don't. And so we haven't even really scratched the surface of our audience yet. We've only been really servicing a very small segment of our audience. And so within that, obviously, a lot of entrepreneurs are parents, but the parenting content, it has just gone bananas. And it's helped me identify that, it's not just a lot of entrepreneurs that are wanting to know how to be better parents or better leaders as parents. But there's also just a lot of people in general that just want to be better, as human beings and create a better generation of humans, because they've realized that their parents in some way have maybe fucked them up.
I mean, I think there's I forget the book, is something along the lines of how to not fuck up your kid or something like that, right? And
I was telling you about that James Oliver book. It's called They Fuck You Up.
Yeah, that's the one.
It's a book on parenting. It's called They Fuck You Up.
Yeah.
And everyone does the best that they can. But one of the things that I'm learning is parenting is becoming a very hot topic, especially with COVID, but it was just even pre-COVID. We've got about 100 million views just on parenting content.
So what do you say then to this discussion, we'll call it, where you should be making content that is for your audience only, stay focused on that, and not, because you seem to be stretching it out.
I am, but I'm still making content for my audience. 87% of my high paying clients are parents. So,
but it's parenting content. It's not what you sell them about.
This
right?
is, let me show you the magic of.
Yeah. This is the part which I want to talk about.
This is where you want to get to, is it?
Yeah.
So this is really part of our strategy is we've created multiple verticals of content. So we've got a business vertical, we've got a meditation, spiritual vertical, we have a health vertical, a parenting vertical, an ADHD and dyslexia, an addiction vertical, mental health vertical, performance vertical. And so what we've done, and your guys the tacticians out there are going to love this, we've employed a really strategic marketing process whereby we funnel our videos. And so we advertise a lot of videos, all of our videos, 99% of the videos that we advertise, there's no call to action. There's no link to a website. It's just a video, utility video. But when someone watches that video, so the top of the funnel video might be on parenting, okay? And so that'll capture the people, and we go broad, not just parents in business, I go broad. And because I want everyone who likes this to share it, because they may not be a business owner, but at the top of the funnel, I don't really care. They will share it in their network. They're going to have business owners in their network that's going to add them to the top of the funnel. We then retarget those people with content that is a little bit more business orientated, okay? And then we slowly, as we walk down the funnel, and some of our funnels are between 7 to 30 videos deep, we essentially get the content more pure related towards business. And so as a result, we get this really segmented qualified audience down the bottom. We might start with a segment, let's say of, let's say 5,000. But by the time we get down the bottom, it might only be 250. But the segments that we're starting with right now, like we've got bottom of the funnel campaigns right now where we've got like 49 million people in the audience. At the bottom of the funnel, on one funnel, and so for us, we just continually roll. We'll have all these different top of funnel hooks that will get people into the funnels, and then we're just constantly putting people through a funnel. But what makes our content or our marketing strategy really, I guess, unique is we're not bombarding people with ad messaging. We're not bombarding people with direct response. We're essentially sequencing where it's roughly every 7 to 15 exposures, we'll drop a call to action in front of them. And here's what I've discovered: if I go direct call to action for a lead gen, I will pay, and sometimes more, sometimes less, but let's say on average, I was paying about $42 a lead. Okay. But as soon as I switched to the utility funnel where I wasn't putting, direct response at the top of the funnel, I was warming people up. I was getting 1 and 2 cent views for the first 7 to 10 videos. And then I was getting $1.65 conversion down the bottom, and so that engages this psychology. It's called the mirror exposure effect, which is a psychological phenomena whereby people tend to develop a preference for things once they become familiar with them. And in social psychology, it's called the familiarity principle. And you'd know this concept very well. We need to be exposed to a product or service or a brand multiple times before something inside us shifts, it clicks. And then we go, I want to actually talk to someone about that, not buy, talk, and back in 2005, it was 5.4 exposures. In 2012, it was 12.8 exposures. And they predicted by 2019-20, it was going to be 20 exposures were required to trigger that same level of familiarity. And so in a new age world like this, we've got to ask ourselves the question, how do we market, to an audience that in most cases they don't want to be marketed to? Well, you don't market to them, you help them, and you understand that the social environment for marketing is not the traditional environment for marketing. The traditional environment for marketing, it's culturally acceptable to pitch. In the social environment for marketing, it's not. Okay, it's like inviting 50 people to your birthday and 49 show up with presents and one shows up with a fucking sandwich board and brochures and they're trying to sell the other 49 people. It's just not socially appropriate. Okay, and this is the challenge that people have. They're taking traditional methods and trying to deploy them in a social context and wondering why they're polarizing the audience or they're not getting the sentiment or the traction, that they're really looking for. In a social context, we're mammals, we're collaborators, we like to help people, and that by virtue is what creates attention. Is there some help? Is it going to entertain me, inform me, educate me, make me laugh, make me cry? How's it going to add something to my life right now outside of another message, another direct call to action, which after a while, as you know, we just end up turning into banner blindness or resentment. And that's even worse. Imagine having a client see your brand, they're like, oh, I see their fucking ads everywhere, I hate them. Like, that's just not the sentiment you want.
Yeah, we do a lot of content, but I think we also do a lot of retargeting. And I'm sure that there's lots of companies who'd be like, we're profits, because I've been retargeting on Facebook since 2012. So there's teenagers that now have competitive companies now that like, hey, I saw you when I was just a teenager. I'm like, oh, goodness.
I know. scary. These kids are growing up quickly, mate.
So what platform is your favorite platform right now?
Facebook. I love Facebook. I'm a Facebook loyalist in many respects. Don't get me wrong. We've done really well on TikTok. You know, we're streaming towards about 300,000 on TikTok. Instagram does well for us, but Facebook just continually performs from an impact perspective. And also from an ad perspective, you know, it gives us the best ROI of any platform on the market, but it also has the best, gives us the best exposure of any platform on the market from an organic perspective, because we still get really mad organic reach, and everyone's saying organic reach is dying, and it's not as good as what it used to be, you know. But I still you know, look down at my reach, and you know, I think right now. Last week we're sitting on around 15 million, you know, just for the week. And so, you know, there's still reach to be had. And I just love the platform because I can literally get on there and it's just stream after stream after stream of people who are sharing how their life has been impacted in some way, shape or form. And I've received, and this is a really interesting consequence and side effect of content marketing. I have now received in excess of 1,000 messages. One I even just got the other day. It was only the other day. It's probably down a little bit now, where I get people saying to me at least a couple times a week, "Thank you so much for the content. If not for your video, I would not be here." You know, because there are people that literally plan their day to day. I didn't know this was the thing because it's happened so much. I've actually discovered people, you know, when they're feeling in that frame of mind, they'll actually plan it out. And then they'll go and say their goodbyes and, you know, visit everyone's Facebook profiles or whatever. And, you know, I've had that many people that have been in that process, and then a Facebook video pops up, you know, of me solving a problem, and they go, shit, you know. And to me, I take that shit pretty seriously because I'm very well aware that there's mums, dads, kids, aunties, uncles, grandparents, and grandmas right now that are present in a family unit that wouldn't be there if not for the fact I just bothered, you know, to share a piece of content around addiction or dyslexia or mental health or relationships. And
I've seen some of those streams of comments on some of those videos. They get pretty emotional. They get pretty, man,
it's insane,
full on. Just to lift it back up again to more to marketing stuff, but like, is there a length? Well, let's talk about the organic thing, right? Because that organic side of things, like you started and it was already dead.
I got my growth when organic was apparently already dead.
Dead, right? And the thing is, it was generally dead for most companies that were doing that non-engaging, pretty boring content. But what was like? How did you get such large organic reach? Like, was it
I think it was the documentation style. It was the style of content. I showed everybody everything. And I don't know, have you seen The Social Experiment? Like, yes. I showed people my fucking divorce. Like, I actually had and you know, my ex-wife and, you know, our families are friends. And, you know, I actually had my ex-wife reaching out to me going, okay, you have to start pulling some of this stuff back. I'm not comfortable with some of the stuff you're showing here. Because I literally said, when we signed up for this, it's access all areas. I'm not hiding a thing. And I said that to everyone, the team, you know, my ex-wife, and everyone's like, yep, we're all on board. And I'm like, well, that was part of the deal. And she's like, well, no, it's at a point now where I'm uncomfortable. And when people get to see you, it's one thing, but it's when they get to learn who you are. It's when they get to see you in a tough situation. It's when they get to see you handle failure or handle success or handle a highly vulnerable situation. They really start to fucking care. And I think that's where we really struck a chord. Like, people look at me and they go, I've heard this so many times where people come and go, man, you're just so fucking real. You're just so real. And it's like, yeah, I am. Like, I'm real flesh and bone, but I just don't care what people think. And as a result, you know, that gives me a liberty of expression that I think inspires a lot of people to go, fuck, you know, I wish I could just, you know, be like that, or I am like that and I relate to that.
So then what would you advise to the companies that are earning between, say, $1 to $100 million a year or whatever, right? And let's say that they're more the $50 to $100 million companies, right? That have staff, operations and all that. And they now want to really start to get traction on social media, but they're like, what am I going to do? Just get someone to follow me around all day? Like, how can these larger companies start to kind of produce content that connects?
Yeah. Look, to me, it's about finding the narratives. You know, you've got to find the storylines that resonate with the audience. And it just so happens my narratives resonate really well with my audience. And so depending on what type of business you are, I'd be looking within that business to find out where you've got narratives that are playing out naturally that would resonate really well with your clients, and then document that. Now, there might be some businesses where, well, we can't document what we do. And I'd say, well, I dare say you probably could. You just got to think a little bit strategically about how you could actually go about that. The challenge is then there's obviously relinquishing, the power of a brand. But, what is Big Brother? Big Brother, who's Big Brother? How many people are associated with Big Brother? It's not funny. And I'm not saying you want to become a Big Brother, but what I am saying is there's no reason why you can't have some form of a reality media division or a reality media, content production division in any organization where you just look at how do we, actually capture something that we do that would really resonate well with our audience that translates. And look, I think it'd be hard pressed to find some businesses that couldn't, because we've done this with landscape gardeners, directional drillers, mining companies, seed companies. Like it can be done. It just comes down. We had one guy who did road surface concrete preparation. He was getting business off Snapchat just by, Snapchatting him, grind concrete. So to me, it's about, just first of all, being visible to your audience, but then on some level, exposing them to a narrative and looking at what those narratives look like, because, not everyone might be able to go and create some kind of documentation content. You might go, well, we don't have the ability to document anyone, T's and C's and rules and laws. Okay, well, great. And then maybe your strategy needs to be content creation. My strategy is content documentation, and that works really well for me because I don't have the time to sit in front of a camera. Whereas if, you find yourself at a bypass where you don't have a personality, you don't have a narrative, you go, okay, well, what are some of the problems we can solve for our audience? And let's create really compelling and engaging content that would solve some of those problems. But the most important thing is without trying to sell them something. And this is what I want everyone to understand, because the moment people sniff the sell, the moment people sniff the marketing, that's what in some cases turns them off. And that's why our content works so well, because there's just no marketing, and as a result, we wake up every day to hundreds of messages from all over the different platforms asking from people all over the world asking if we've got something we can sell, and that's the thing. It's a longer play when you're playing the content game, as you know, Alex, but it's one in the social environment. You don't have a fucking choice. And if you try to force it, you're going to be that creeper at the bar that keeps rocking up on girls, and, you're trying to take them back to your room on the first line versus, hey, slow down. Let's have a chat. Let's go out a couple times, then maybe let's exchange phone numbers. Who knows? And, that's the environment we're living in right now. And we have to cater, to that exposure being meted over a period of time and stop trying to go in straight for the kill straight away.
Yeah, we've been doing content like that for years and years and years. And it's like you need to kind of separate, like in your mind, you're making content, make the very best content you can, forget about selling anything, link it to what you sell if you can, right? But don't try and sell anything and just basically educate or something like that.
Absolutely.
A part of the reason that we're doing the podcast is because, again, with the volume of content required, we want to add value. We spend a lot of money on this just to add value. And, we talk about everything as well, right? But again, it's to invest.
Exposure, and when you stack your channels and stack your exposures, people go, 20 exposures, that's going to take fucking forever. No, it could take like a day and a half. It could take half a day. If you're across all channels or platforms, you're posting on a regular basis, plus 5 to 10 stories a day, you can get to 20 exposures quick smart. It comes down to your ability to produce that content and distribute that content. But as a really interesting side note, Alex, and you'll probably enjoy this, for the first 9 months when we launched our Facebook and our Facebook blew up, we only published 1 new video per week.
Wow.
That was it.
Wow.
I know. Everybody says that. And we went through
How long were the videos? How long were they?
They were the social experiment videos. So they were, let's call it 8 to 35 minutes long.
Wow. And did you do little snippets as well? Like little
bits and pieces, but it was only 1 video a week. 1 video a week. And then we built up and then we could obviously repost.
Yeah.
And now we post, I think it's 5 new, just on Facebook now, 5 new pieces of content a week.
Yep.
But obviously we're rescheduling, on those other post schedules, content, high performing content from previous posts.
So any good hacks then? Just since like you just kind of chucked a little process in there that you just, oh yeah, by the way, we just did that. I'm like,
best ad hack. And I say, get good organic reach. You fucking will smash your ad strategy, because Facebook really do want to create a good user experience, that we can attest to for the most part. And, when you've got good content that's performing well organically, that almost ensures for Facebook that someone's going to have a much greater probability of a good user experience if they engage with your ad and your product and service. And so we've found, the sentiment off the back of a good content strategy, can take your cost per conversion from $42 down to $1.65. And Facebook's in the business of, yes, they're in the business of making money, but they can only make money if they retain users. And so to me, it's about how do we play into their, because people keep saying organic's dead, but you've only got to look around and see that there's still plenty of organic influencers out there that are doing really well, but their content's just on point. Production value's got higher, sound value, everything has gotten higher. But at the same time, now we have these little, platforms like TikTok popping up, and you've got, 13-year-olds making $1.8 million a deal on endorsements. So it's nuts.
Yeah, and I do like the idea of just having some type of a documentary of these larger companies. I mean, that stuff would be interesting. Like, I'd love to see Coca-Cola, for example. What the hell happens in Coca-Cola?
How riveted would you be right now if Australia Post had a fucking documentary?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
as an example, and again, I know that's one that's quite dramatic, but this is what people got to understand. In our content, I show everything. I show the drama. I show the highs. I show the lows. In fact, Matthias, he's hell-bent on showing people the worst of me because that's what people like the most. They like to see me flawed. They like to see me being human. And Matthias just loves it because there's plenty of fucking opportunities to show people. But again, it resonates because it's not so much me showing how flawed I am. It's people seeing how I respond to being flawed, and how I deal with being flawed.
Yeah, and I think it's also good, like just for those large companies to have practical lawyers that will actually let some stuff go through, because I think everyone will be scared of the legal, like we can't show that because what kind of if? Yeah. What if? That would be the biggest concern.
Especially with documentary, because we got, up until last week, we had 9 editors. And so, we do need to have an oversight, like a legal oversight. And that legal oversight is just a process, making sure, Kerwin's not talking about, psychedelics or cannabis too much, or, just really being cautious of some of the things that I am saying. Because as you know, I will talk about anything, when it comes to the realms of my experience. There's nothing that I won't go near. And as a result, sometimes, if it's a live one-off, that's fine. But, sometimes you just don't want that in perpetuity.
Yeah, okay. Let's jump now because, man, we can chat, that's for sure. Personal, professional development, right? Is there a difference between personal and professional development? And if so, what would be the difference?
Look, I don't know, but if you did want to categorize it, you go, well, personal development is like amateur, professional development is like, you're doing it for commercial gain. And I guess any form of development is a professional development if it makes you, it increases your capacity as an earner, or a player, more importantly. But I'm big, and like we've invested probably hundreds of thousands, if not over $1 million on stuff. But a business will never outgrow the development of the owner. We're always constantly trying to grow the business in some way. And whether it's a scale up or scale down, you're still trying to grow something. And, businesses are organic in their ability to grow. But like a plant in the garden, they need to be tended, And I think that's an important part of the process is the tendering part and making time to, support the growth.
So what are the areas in a professional sense for marketing leaders, for business leaders, for CEOs, for founders?
Yep.
There comes a point where you've achieved a certain amount of success. And the thing I've seen is that that's where people stop their growth, and so how do people get past that point, just where you're like, I'm really busy now. Like I've studied, I've got professional development, I'm making some good income, or my business is this. I don't have time anymore. How do people
professional development?
Yeah, for professional development. Do you know what I mean? How do you allow
time to tend the garden and then wondering why it dies? If you, and this is the thing that I kind of correlate with professional development. It's like going to the gym. It's got to be a way of life. If your professional development isn't a way of life strategy, you're already fucked. And I don't mean that to be rude. I mean that because you're already treating it like a prescription medication. For me, performance has to be a way of life, because if it's not a way of life, then it's something that you are doing. It's not something you're being. Whereas for me, it's just frankly, the sooner professional development becomes a way of life, the sooner you just get used to the process of growing. And that's what, as organisms we are here to do. We're here to grow and evolve. And when we limit our potential to do that, we limit our potential to evolve. And to me, that's, ultimately the greatest fulfillment of our purpose is being able to experience as much as we possibly can while we're here in the areas that light us up the most. And I think sometimes when people go, well, I'm just not motivated anymore, you've really got to start looking at, well, what are your motives? What are your values? And you probably get this as well, Alex. People come to you and go, how do I motivate myself? What's a good book for motivation? I said, well, that's a fucking stupid question first and foremost. Okay, because if you're looking for a book or a tape or a podcast to motivate you, you're already fucked because you're looking on the outside. Motivation is not an outside job, it's an inside job. And the only way you're going to find, what your true motivations are is by getting to know who you are and what your genuine core values are, because a core value is a motive. And when you understand what your motives are, you're better able to understand the decisions that you make. And you don't sit there and go, why do I keep making these silly decisions? Or why am I not motivated to make money when I really should be and everyone else is? And so for me, a big part of the performance game is self-awareness, and if you don't, your development will always be limited by what you're aware of as of your obstacles or your opportunities. Because
I sometimes mentor people, and one of the questions I ask is, what do you want? And I think that's a really good question. It's like, hey, I'm not motivated anymore, or hey, I feel stuck, or hey, I don't know, like I've lost something. It's like, what do you want? And it's such a hard question for people to answer sometimes, because you might find yourself on a path and you're now lost in that path.
Earlier on, I thought I wanted money, and ended up on paths where I was making money, but I was fucking miserable. And then when I realized what I really wanted was not to be happy, was to live in harmony and to be happy. Then I started aligning with pursuits that, gave me more of that.
Yeah. When I was younger, I think maybe the mid-20s, and I had like this job, and we were selling ringtones and love calculators on phones, killing it, right? Killing it. I think we were selling so much. But then a couple of years in, I think we were the Deloitte Fast 50, we were like at the top through these terrible, like it was not value adding to the world. But I had enough money at that point that it wasn't about the money anymore. And I was so interested that I was like, because up until that point, it was all about the money. I was like, I don't care what it is, just as long as I got money. And there comes a point where it's enough. And then all of a sudden everything changes, right? And so it's like, what do people do when they're at that point where they've changed, or something's changed in their values, and they have realized that they're on the wrong path, but maybe it's too scary to change paths, or maybe just the fear starts to come in?
I think step one is suffer. You've got to experience some pain. If you're not going to experience some pain, you're not going to change. And, I think there's a lot of beauty in being lost, because it creates in great levels of discomfort, but also levels of boredom. And I think sometimes when people are unsure of what to do, they need to literally just completely unplug from the world and go and get bored, because it's when we get bored is when we get creative. And this happened with our kids yesterday. The kids were wanting to watch screen. We're like, no screen time. Go and use your imagination. And there was whinging and bitching and moaning. And anyway, 2 minutes later, it was silence. And we go outside, and they're playing with cardboard boxes, and they played with cardboard boxes for 3.5 hours. And David Deida, and I'm pretty sure you've probably read The Way of the Superior Man. He talks about in a really important phase of life for men, and I would go as far as to say for women as well. When you are unsure of what to do, when you are, lacking in direction, to actually do nothing, like actually dedicate time to doing nothing, void of distraction. Because if, you're in that bored place and you fill your life with distraction, you may not see the thing that is just burgeoning under the surface, that when it comes along, if you're looking at every other shiny object there, you might miss that. And that to me plays really well into the boredom, the boredom scenario. We've got to get to a point where we, are bored enough for, whatever is new to come to the surface, if that's where you're in, if you're in that stage of life.
And I think there's a lot of opportunity for that right now with everything happening in the world. I think there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of people questioning just where they are, and, and there's a lot of opportunity, and sometimes it is hard to take a new step, So I do like your suggestion of just be bored. I find it really hard to sit still, so I wouldn't know what to do.
I'm planning on doing this over Christmas, because I haven't been bored in so long now, and I'm looking for a creative burst, and so the way I get a creative burst is I unplug and I get completely bored, and I don't, I'm going to buy a caravan. I'm going to go and fucking sit on a beach somewhere, and just get so bored that I start thinking about cool shit.
And for high performance individuals who just want to get to that next level, right? What are some ways they can think bigger?
I don't know if it's necessarily about thinking bigger. Like for me, performance, a lot of performance, yes, thinking bigger is important, but to me, that's a variable that can be managed quite easily. The variables that are more difficult to manage when it comes to performance is knowing how to regulate the systems in your body that enable you to perform at a higher level consistently in situations where people couldn't. So learning how to regulate emotions is, critical. Learning how to regulate stress, which are both biological, consequential actions in the body. And, one of the things that I've learned that's most important when it comes to performance, the more I can work with an individual and show them how to regulate those systems, just as those two base systems, right? The more performance they're able to achieve as a direct result, the more flow states they're able to achieve as a direct result. Because a lot of people don't realize the impact of stress and emotions when it comes to performance. Emotions themselves are a filtering mechanism. They're a chemical response that starts in the brain, and they change the way we filter information in order to maintain the vibe ratio of that emotion. So if you're feeling positive, you have to ignore all the negative. If you're feeling negative, you have to ignore all the positive. And as entrepreneurs, we want to be able to see everything. I don't want to just be biased in looking at information. I don't want to have information bias, and that's why we've got to be able to look at everything.
Yeah, right. And it's a hard, man. That's a whole nother discussion. Listen,
I could open a door if I kept going.
Sorry, what's that?
See, I was going to open a big door if I kept going that way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that you know the doors and how big they can go. Let's just finish off with some quick fire questions, right? These are 5 questions I like to ask. Yeah. Number 1, what book has had the biggest impact on your success?
Gosh. Oh, damn. That's a tough one. Oh, Fundamental Think and Grow Rich. Yeah. I know it's cliche, but actually there's another one that really has, because it kind of started at a very different journey, and it may not necessarily be one that people would expect. It's called The Holographic Universe by Malcolm Talbot. The Holographic Universe just helps people have an understanding of the fundamentals of how reality is formed. And I find the more I understand about reality, the more I can play with it.
Yeah, for sure. Number 2, what's your number 1 piece of advice for hiring awesome people?
Ooh, yeah. I guess I'd call it values elicitation. Skills and values elicitation. Like my job is not a skills elicitation. My job when I interview someone is to find out what their genuine values are. And I do that just by asking questions like, so tell me about you. Where did you grow up? What did you do? What were your hobbies? What do you do in your spare time? Like, what do you do for fun? What lights you up? Because what I'm really looking for when it comes to hiring good talent is people that are aligned with the values of the organization, who are going to come in and just naturally kind of flow. And so for me, values elicitation is critical because they're the core fundamentals of motives. They're the core motivations. And if we've got similar motivations, then we're going to move in the same direction.
And how do you find values? This is just a quick follow-up question.
It's a really simple process. You just ask things like, so what's important to you? Like, but I do it contextually. So tell me about where you grew up. Did you play sport at school? Did you have any hobbies at school? Like, what did you do for fun when you're at school? What about now? What do you do for fun now? What do you do on the weekends? Like, when you're not at work, what do you do? If you had $100 million in the bank, what would you spend it on? Like, I just want to find out, and I want to ask enough questions to really kind of explore and go, what are their genuine values? But in most cases, it just sounds like a really natural conversation. So many times people come out and go, oh, I didn't feel like an interview. I just felt like it was a chat. And I was like, yeah, it was a great chat. But I realized you're perfect for us or you're not perfect for us.
That's fantastic, mate. Yeah, that's great. Number 3, what's your best time management or productivity tip?
Oh, schedule it done is probably one of the best ones. If it's got to get done, it's got to be in the schedule. Like my time management, and again, this might sound really obnoxious, but I actually have a PA that manages my time for me, so I don't even have to think about time management. But to me, without a schedule, without a list, without an objective, you basically, if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it with remarkable accuracy every single time. And the way we plan, because we plan every year, we break it down in the quarter, we break it down in the month, and we break it down in the week, and then we break it down in the day. Vern, we follow similar principles to the Rockefeller habits, and so as a result, we always have a plan and we always know what to do. And there's never a moment where we sit there and go, shit, what do I need to do? There's always a document you can look and go, fuck, there's a to-do, or there's a goal, or there's a priority.
Perfect. Number 4, what's the best piece of business advice that you've ever received?
It's a really good question. Best piece of business advice I've ever received. Look, the one that keeps popping into my mind is it always takes twice as long and costs 10 times as much.
I hear you there, brother.
And that to me is, really just advice on perspective of, whether you're playing a long game or a short game. But yeah, it's always harder than it looks. You know,
Always.
something like that optimistic start when you get into business and you think anything is possible. And I think that's sometimes required, because otherwise, why the fuck would you do it?
Love it. And number 5, last one. How do you relax after a crazy day in the office?
It's interesting. It's changed a lot because now I've repartnered. My new partner, she's got a 9-year-old daughter, so I've got a very big family vibe going on right now. But the way that I chill out is I spend time with my family, and sometimes it's beautiful quiet, and sometimes it's beautiful chaos. But for me, the number one way I chill out, and it's going to sound, maybe the ladies out there will enjoy this, is when I have my partner in my arms, and the more of her skin I can feel, like we just neutralize each other. And so the moment I touch her, I just go neutral. And I find myself able to chill out very easily. But apart from that, I meditate a lot, but I normally do that in the early part of the day. And just play with the kids.
That's awesome, Kerwin. Now, for the listeners of the podcast, if there was one action that you would like them to take, subscribe somewhere or to go somewhere, what would you like them to do?
Yeah, great question. Look, I think the most important thing you could do right now is to take some form of action. The action I would suggest you take is that if on some level something I've said has resonated with you, I'll say this. My information is very good. And if you want to increase your performance, just follow me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and my information, my content will come up enough to affect you in some way, whether it be small or large, it will change your life forever.
And his content's good stuff. I've looked at it, and he's still one of the people I still check out his content.
Sounds obnoxious, but I look at our content, I go, we actually do really good content. And I hope that doesn't sound arrogant, but I do appreciate good information.
No, it's fantastic information. Kerwin, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I made it within time. We didn't get even a fraction of the stuff I wanted to talk about, but I really do appreciate your time.
Let's do a follow-up, mate. I want to do a follow-up. I love it.
Sure? Are you up for a follow-up?
Yeah, definitely. Get it in the book with Annabelle, and we'll do another one. We can dive into some other topics.
Yeah, because I've got so many topics, but this has been a good first one.
And I love talking to you, mate.
Mate, this is so awesome. Thanks so much for your time today, Kerwin. We'll talk soon.
Talk soon, Alex. Thanks, mate.
See you, mate.
Brother. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the Growth Manifesto podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. For more episodes, please visit growthmanifesto.com/podcast. And if you need help driving growth for your company, please get in touch with us at webprofits.io.